published 0552 the 14th of December 2017, updated 1254 the 14th of December 2017. Members of the royal family shed tears for the victims of the Grenfell Tower fire alongside their bereaved relatives at a poignant and emotional memorial service today. Princes Charles, William and Harry were joined by the Duchess of Cornwall and Duchess of Cambridge at St. Paul's Cathedral for the service, with Kate clearly battling tears as tributes were made to those who lost their lives in the tragedy. Celebrities with links to the area were also among the 1,500 guests, including Adele, who had many friends in the Kensington community, who was seen openly weeping as she embraced others in the congregation. She was joined by fellow singer Marcus Mumford and his actress wife Carey Mulligan, with both also seen crying as they struggled to keep their emotions under control. After the service, the royals were quick to engage with the families, providing comforting words and a friendly face for them to talk to and share their grief with. It comes after Boris Johnson branded London Mayor Sadiq Khan's response to the tragedy spineless, after Tory councillors were blocked from attending today's service. The Foreign Secretary launched a furious attack on the London mayor, who he said should share some of the blame over why many victims have still not been rehoused. And he hit out at the decision to block Tory councillors in Kensington and Chelsea from attending even though Labour councillors were invited. The blaze at the 24-story tower in June killed 71 people and injured a further 70, while making hundreds homeless, and is believed to have been started by a faulty fridge freezer before spreading rapidly. From left, Prince Harry, Kate, Camilla, Prince William and Prince Charles all looked somber as they attended a memorial service for the victims of the Grenfell Tower fire at St. Paul's Cathedral today. The Duchess of Cambridge, pictured sitting between her husband Prince William and brother-in-law Prince Harry, appeared to be welling up during the service. Kate, centre, was clearly affected by the emotion of the occasion, with the royal family praised for its response to the tragedy, while Prince Harry also made sure to raise people's spirits. Although some of the families said they had no trust in the government, they praised the royals, including Kate, left and right, for their reaction and help since the disaster. Singer Adele, centre, who had friends in the community, was joined by Marcus Mumford, left, of band Mumford & Sons, and his actress wife Carey Mulligan, right, who have helped organize the charity response to the tragedy. Adele was visibly upset throughout the service and stopped to embrace members of the community as her emotional friends Mumford and Mulligan watched on in tears. Many of the guests broke down at the end of the service and were comforted by their families as the impact of the tragedy continues to affect their lives. Adele, pictured, even had to close her eyes to fight back the tears. The star previously visited the scene of the fire hours after the incident to comfort the families. Marcus Mumford, pictured with his wife Mulligan, was among those who took part in a charity football match for Grenfell. Adele, Mulligan and Mumford, pictured left to right, struggled to keep their emotions in check as they left the cathedral. The sad looks on the faces of Mumford, Adele and Mulligan, pictured, were matched by all those sitting around them. Meanwhile, Theresa May was pictured arriving via rear entrance, but it is not known whether this was due to anger directed at her during the time of the incident and the subsequent banning of Tory councillors from the service. Prince Harry spent time after the service meeting families and told one widow he was incredibly sorry for her loss. The Duchess of Cambridge, centre, attended a memorial service for the victims of the Grenfell Tower Inferno at St. Paul's Cathedral today, where she comforted families of the victims. Kate also made sure to speak to members of the clergy after the service and enjoyed warm conversations with all involved. As families left the service, they carried pictures of their loved ones and white roses as a tribute to those who died. A number of politicians did attend this service, including Theresa May, Jeremy Corbyn and Communities Secretary Sajid Javid. Mrs. May was spotted arriving via rear entrance, but it is not known whether this had anything to do with the public backlash she faced for a delayed reaction over the tragedy in June or the banning of the local Tory politicians. As the service ended, the Grenfell banner was held aloft and carried out of the cathedral, followed by survivors and bereaved holding white roses and photographs of their loved ones. Maria Jafari, 38, and her family met Prince Harry at the end of the service. Harry told her mother, Fatima Jafari, 78, that she must have been very proud of her daughter for speaking at the front, before congratulating her for taking part. As Mrs. Jafari began sobbing for her husband, who was 82 when he died, the prince asked an interpreter, "Just tell her I am so incredibly sorry for her loss." Her daughter said, "It's very, very hard. Still, my mother cries, every day, every second when we are talking about our father, all the memories come out again. It's 6 months and it's still very hard for us." Meanwhile, the Bishop of Kensington told the community at the heart of the Grenfell Tower fire of his hope that the tower may one day become a symbol of the time we learnt a new and better way. The Right Reverend Graham Tomlin said 6 months on there were so many unresolved issues and questions, but he trusted that the truth would bring justice and heal the divides in society the tragedy had laid bare. He told survivors and those who lost family members in the blaze that he hoped that Thursday's national memorial service would assure them that the nation had not forgotten them. Pictured, looked upset throughout the service and instantly made her way to talk to relatives once it had finished. Prince Charles, Center, was also seen speaking to bereaved relatives of victims as the royal family left the service. Prince William looks solemn as he greets people affected by the tragedy in West London. 6 months ago, armed police were on hand to provide security and spoke to some of the children to reassure them as they left. Theresa May wore a stoic expression as she sat next to Sajid Javid and Nick Hurd at the service at the cathedral. The memorial service in London focused on remembering the 71 victims of the June 14 Tower Block blaze. The royals leave St. Paul's Cathedral following the service this morning, led by Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall. Marcus Mumford and Adele, who both supported the relief effort after the fire, were pictured outside St. Paul's Cathedral today. Mulligan placed a reassuring hand on the shoulder of a mourner after the service as she chatted to families of victims. Adele left, and the married celebrity couple, Wright, also carried white flowers after the service in tribute to the victims. Local MP Emma Dentcote wore a green scarf to the ceremony, a color which has come to symbolize the tragedy in North Kensington. Earlier, the Labour MP told the Press Association it's a day of national mourning for something that happened in our neighbourhood, and that means a lot to the survivors and the bereaved. The recognition that people from all walks of government are going to come down and grieve with them. That's hugely important and will mean a lot to people. I think emotions are still very raw, very raw, and it's as if it happened yesterday for a lot of people. Her Labour colleague from Kensington and Chelsea Council, Robert Atkinson, said it was right that local authority leaders avoided the ceremony. Mr. Atkinson represents the ward in which Grenfell Tower stands and publicly clashed with former council leader Nicholas Paget-Brown before his resignation. He said, "I think the council needs to stay in the council and do the things it should be doing. This event is for the community of North Kensington and the people of North Kensington. I'm here, in a humble capacity, as a representative of that community, and I have to say that the Conservative group are not trusted by the people of North Kensington." He criticized the council for the speed at which survivors were being rehoused, with many still without a permanent home 6 months on. Kate, William and Harry then left the cathedral, with Kate appearing to be struggling to keep her hat on. The Duchess of Cambridge could be seen holding her pregnancy bump as she left St. Paul's Cathedral this morning. The royals from left, Prince Harry, the Duchess and Duke of Cambridge, the Duchess of Cornwall and Prince Charles rose with the congregation to bow their heads for a moment's silence to pay respect to those who died. Politicians, royals and members of the public were all affected by the grief of the occasion at the memorial service. Bishop Tomlin told the congregation at St. Paul's Cathedral, "My hope, my prayer is that today we will pledge ourselves to change, from a city where we didn't listen, where we didn't hear the cries of our neighbors because we were too wrapped up in our own interests and prosperity, to create a new type of life together, where we are turned not inwards to ourselves, but outwards towards each other, a society known for listening, compassion and love." In years to come, our hope is that the name of Grenfell will not just be known as a symbol of sorrow, of grief or injustice, but a symbol of the time we learned a new and better way to listen and to love. Reflecting on the immediate aftermath of the fire, the bishop said the response from all over London, the UK and beyond had been extraordinary, while the emergency services worked tirelessly. He said he was struck by the variety of ethnicities, religions and ages that had turned out to help, calling it a moment we all lost our fear of each other. He said it was a glimpse of what our society could be like, a place where we were for a brief moment more concerned about our neighbors' well-being than we were about our own. As we come to the end of this difficult year, as we celebrate Christmas, as we move into a new year, nothing can remove the memory of that night, nor do we want to forget those dearly loved people who were lost. And yet my hope and prayer is that this new year can bring new hope of a future, a vision of a city where we lose our self-obsession and listen and learn from places and people that we wouldn't normally think of reaching out to. Harry, Kate, William, Camilla and Charles pictured sitting on the front row at St. Paul's Cathedral for the service this morning. Bereaved families said it was wonderful the royals recognized the seriousness of the situation, with the Duchess of Cambridge appearing to blink back tears. Prince Charles, the Duchess of Cornwall, Princes Harry and William and the Duchess of Cambridge are attending a service for the victims of the Grenfell Tower fire today. Pictured many family members of the victims were seen weeping in their seats at the service, with some covering their faces as they struggled to cope with the emotions. Politicians including from left Emma Dentcote, Liam Byrne, Diane Abbott, Jeremy Corbyn, Sadiq Khan, Nick Hurd, Sajid Javid and Theresa May were also among the invited guests. Larry Mundy, who lost 2 relatives in the fire and helped shape the service, called on Prime Minister Theresa May to agree to a decision-making panel to sit alongside the chairman of the public inquiry. She said of the service, "There were some powerful words. I'm very proud of the bishop for acknowledging the truth. I just hope, the world was listening to this. I really hope there can be some changes in humanity for the world today." Very powerful words. I'd just like to see the action that's going to follow. She added, "I strongly believe in faith, and let's hope this is the beginning of a bright new day for us all." Ms. Mendy was one of those who met the Duke of Cambridge as the service drew to a close. She said William had asked to be invited to the service, and that she had asked him if he would consider becoming a patron of her new group, Humanity for Grenfell. She said, "He's shown a lot of concern. I can see the compassion and the empathy he has. It's his borough and he feels it." Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn said after the service, he wanted to change things for the understandably angry residents. He said, "Out here, the questions still have to be answered. Why have so many families not been rehoused? Why are so many still going through such stress of not knowing what the future holds?" That came from all of those that delivered prayers and messages today. We have to ensure they have been rehoused. The inquiry has to come up with some very strong answers to some very tough questions about the building, the cladding and the performance of the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea. Ben Gabitas, whose close friend and confidant Sheila died in the fire, hailed the Royals' presence as a constant strand of support through the uncertainty of the past 6 months. The 48-year-old said healing would take a long time and that the service and people's faith is an important part of what's getting them through. Mr. Gabitas said he had been immediately struck by the way the tragedy touched the nation, praising the almost immediate spontaneous, visceral response of people wishing to help. He said another unifying force was the presence of the sovereign, which seemed almost immediate again in terms of they hardly needed to be consulted. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn attended the service, and told grieving families he wanted to change things for them. The Labour leader, pictured embracing a relative of a victim, said there were still questions to answer over the blaze. The Duchess, pictured left and right with Prince William, looked very emotional inside the cathedral this morning. Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall, left, also attended the service with the princes and Kate Middleton, with families saying they were a welcome presence. One friend of a Grenfell victim said the royals, from left, the Duchess of Cornwall, Prince William, the Duchess of Cambridge and Prince Harry were a unifying force. The Duchess of Cambridge, right, looked visibly sad as she climbed the steps to the cathedral alongside her husband and brother-in-law, who similarly bowed their heads respectfully. Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall appeared to be touched by the emotion at the service as they spoke to members of the clergy. Think the nation at that point appreciated her being present, and particularly William and Harry, and I think that was a unifying force of which there were no politicians who managed that. The royals' numerous visits to the community since the fire formed a thread which has led to their presence at the service, he said, adding, "That is wonderful that there is recognition at that level. And as I said, it was one of the only unifying forces, and at these times I guess we are more thankful we have a royal family and its place within our society." A green for Grenfell banner adorned with a heart was carried in as a hymn was sung at the start of the service, before the Very Reverend Dr. David Ison, Dean of St. Paul's, welcomed the congregation. He said, "Among us are survivors of the fire in Grenfell Tower exactly 6 months ago, those who have lost members of their families, or their friends, those who live or work in North Kensington as neighbours and members of the local community, those who served others as frontline responders or volunteers, or who assisted with the immediate tasks of coping with the losses of lives, homes and livelihoods, and they are representatives of our national life, because this is a nation that grieves at the unspeakable tragedy, loss and hurt of that June day. The welcome also includes all of you watching on national television, among whom are those painfully affected who could not face such a public event, those who would have liked to be here in solidarity, those whose hearts go out to the many whose lives have been lost or changed forever. In this service we come together as people of different faiths and none, as we remember before God those whose lives were lost, and pray for them to be at peace as we are alongside brothers and sisters who have lost their homes and their community and those they love, as we commit ourselves to care for each other and to be united in the face of suffering and sorrow, as we seek each other's help and resolve to build on our hopes for a future in which the tragedy that struck the peoples of Grenfell Tower will never happen again." Survivors, bereaved families, the local community and first responders were joined by the royal family today. Prince William put his arm behind his pregnant wife Kate. As they arrived at the cathedral for the service this morning, Prince William was seen putting a reassuring hand on the back of his pregnant wife right as they walked into the cathedral ahead of the 11 a.m. memorial, pausing to speak to the clergy. Right, the Prince of Wales was joined by his sons Prince Harry and Prince William and his daughter-in-law Kate at the service today. Around 1,500 guests were invited to the ceremony, including families of the victims, first responders, members of the emergency services and others from the community. Bishop of Kensington, the Right Reverend Graham Tomlin, said said he hoped the service would reassure those present that they were not forgotten by the nation, and that it would signify the start of a change. He said, as we come to the end of this difficult year, as we celebrate Christmas, as we move into a new year, nothing can remove the memory of that night, nor do we want to forget those dearly loved people who were lost. And yet my hope and prayer is that this new year can bring new hope of a future, a vision of a city where we lose our self-obsession and listen and learn from places and people that we wouldn't normally think of reaching out to. He added that he hoped the word Grenfell would transform over time from a symbol of sorrow, grief or injustice to a symbol of the time we learned a new and better way to listen and to love. Commemorating the dead, the dean said, "Let us remember, united in grief and hope and love." Before the congregation held a minute's silence, an audio montage of voices from the Grenfell area was played to the congregation. A male voice said of the fire, "We were lost for words. We did not know what to do, how to react. I have never known anything like it in my life." Another said, "The comfort is just being together. The comfort is just having each other." The Al Sadiq and Al Zahra School's girls' choir then sang out the poignant words, "Never lose hope." The three royals are among more than 1,500 people thought to be attending the service at St. Paul's Cathedral today. Kate arrives for the memorial service at St. Paul's Cathedral to mark the 6-month anniversary of the tragic fire. The Duchess of Cornwall arrives for the Grenfell Tower National Memorial Service at St. Paul's Cathedral this morning. The service, attended by from left Kate, Harry, William and Prince Charles, provided families of those who died in the blaze an opportunity for words of healing and truth. Kate did allow herself a moment to smile at her husband and brother-in-law as they spoke at the service today. The service provided families of those who died in the blaze an opportunity for words of healing and truth, a bereaved relative said. Clary Mendy, whose cousin Mary Mendy and her daughter Khadija died in the fire, has been helping shape the multi-faith service, which will focus on remembering the 71 victims of the June 14 Tower Block blaze. She said she had asked for the event to be held at St. Paul's Cathedral, exactly 6 months after the fire, and that she hoped the names of the 53 adults and 18 children who died would be read out as a mark of respect and recognition. Ms. Mendy said, "I think a lot of people are anticipating and looking forward to this service at St. Paul's. I know there's a lot of expectations. I know there's a lot of diversity from your normal tradition. I just hope this service resonates with people, with the hunger people have spiritually. A lot of people, right now there's no trust in the government. A lot of people have more faith and trust in their religion." She went on, "I just hope it measures up to everybody's expectations and people will. A lot of family will find healing from the messages, the sermons, and I hope it's soul enriching. I hope there's words that will just echo and resonate, and say, yes, there is empathy, there is humanity, there is hope for the world, because I think this service is the platform that can really start to change humanity, depending on the right words, and it's a church, people of God, how they convey the message to mankind. I hope I'm just not hoping for too much, but I am expecting a lot from this service, especially words of healing, and of truth." Bereaved families and survivors left the cathedral together in silence, holding white roses. Relatives of victims hold photos and flowers as they leave after the Grenfell Tower National Memorial Service. The crowd slowly moved forwards, many comforting each other as they went. Others held portraits of those who died. Some people held pictures of their loved ones who died in the blaze that ripped through the tower block in June. The occasion was too much to bear for some mourners, who held pictures of their loved ones and flowers as they wept. Mourners leave the service while holding pictures and wearing t-shirts to remember the victims of the fire. Clutching their flowers and photos, they paused for a moment, staring out at the bank of photographers and journalists. A banner tribute to the victims of the fire was carried into the multi-faith service as a tribute to those who lost their lives after the emotional service this morning. Mourners poured out onto the steps of St. Paul's Cathedral. Mourners hold portraits of victims as they leave St. Paul's Cathedral after attending the Grenfell Tower Memorial Service.